Hey, my name is shawnshawn. I sell art on shawnshawn.co. Today we're going to react to James Gurney. So looking at his YouTube channel, it has he's actually painting on site. So this kind of shows what he does, which is kind of cool. I've never seen that before. Usually painters just do a sample of their painting and their headshot, but here you have him actually painting on site, which he does a lot in his videos. So that's kind of a cool thing. He has one link to his website, which I totally agree with. I think that's the best strategy. I wouldn't go to your social media. I would just focus every point all to your website. So never go cross, like don't go to Instagram to Facebook and then back to LinkedIn, and have all those point only to the website. So you want to sell on your website. For his profile shot, he has kind of a side shot of him. So I think you can recognize it. You might want to go a little closer, like probably like this close, because once you shrink to the phone is gonna be this big and that icon is gonna be this big. So good luck having it seen. I think you're gonna be able to see this though. So the homepage has one of his paintings is the intro video, which I think is pretty strong. He has uploads, he has popular uploads. I probably put that maybe ahead of the uploads, because if you're a brand new fan, which 95% of probably people are, you probably want that on top so they can find your best stuff first and kind of maybe watch a series of paintings versus just maybe your recent painting isn't as good as your most popular one. So always let Google sort that out for you. He has gouache painting, painting dinosaurs. Ooh, I didn't know he did dinosaurs. Maybe I should do dinosaurs. I didn't even see that. I just saw this. What is this? Watercolor sketching. KCM painting. Why didn't that sort to the top? That's so weird. I guess he did some dinosaurs and then stopped doing dinosaurs. I'm not sure. He has some shorts. He has studio behind the scenes, which is kind of cool. You can learn a little bit more about what he does behind the scenes. And he has shorts, obviously. So I think for the webpage, for the home site for YouTube, I think he's done a pretty good job there, sorting out the paintings how you want. Maybe sort the popular uploads to the top. That'd be my recommendation. The first video we're going to look at is called Painting an Airliner in Gouache, an hour before boarding. You like that tension already. You're like, holy crap, how's he going to paint it in an hour? That's going to be insane, right? Let's check it out, guys.
I'm sitting at the gate waiting for my flight. And I want to paint a portrait of the airplane that's going to take me from San Francisco to Newark.
I didn't know you could
even
paint an airport. It's
got a sort of a circular or elliptical fuselage from this angle. I'll draw it almost like an egg shape using a watercolor pencil. What I'm doing now is just laying it in quickly to get the basic placement on the page. This is a watercolor sketchbook.
So I really like this idea. He's painting with a time limit. His plane's going to take off, so he has only a certain time to paint it. So it really builds a lot of tension right out of the gate. You're like, holy crap, he's got to paint a whole airplane. Like, maybe, you know, everyone, you only have like an hour, so it's like literally you're painting in an hour.
And I'll be using gouache. Once I have a few key lines, I look to make sure that the measurements are right. So I measure the width of the fuselage as a standard unit of measurement, measure that out to the edge of the jet, and see if the vertical measurement's a little taller, and it is.
That's pretty slick to on the fly to kind of measure it that way. So you make sure you're accurate. Because you can't change that once you start going.
The paints I'm using are
the watch is pretty nice too.
Yellow ochre, transparent red oxide, Pyrrole red, Prussian blue, and titanium white.
Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead, guys. This is a really interesting process, but so it's more like the watercolor put down, just kind of soaking in the background, looks like. So I think he's preserving a little bit of white areas.
You can see those highlights, how bright they are.
So he's trying to keep those, I think. So it looks like he's painting watercolor, not gouache, but
I carry just a warm tone down to the foreground area of the picture.
Okay.
And now I want to mix a darker value for the shadow.
And you can tell he's really on site. He could see he's showing his leg hair. You can hear all the background noise with the kids playing. So he hasn't edited that out, which mostly you would edit that out, but if you're doing on site with this type of painting, I would totally leave all that background because it adds that extra flavor and authenticity versus that other guy in the subway pretending to paint in the subway.
Jetway.
You can also tell too because he's shaking a little bit, so he's kind of like holding it, grabbing it around. Let's skip ahead a little bit, guys, because we got a time limit. That's so intense that he has to like, you got all the airfare in the background.
With
It's
gouache,
awesome.
you can build up some of the trim lines like these dividers. Just paint the window all the way across and then divide it with gouache.
I think that brush is a little too thick for what he's doing. I think a really
Now I
thin
want to
pin liner will give you a better
some
line.
lighter tones in the sky. Kind of repaint the sky with a more definite tint of Prussian blue.
It's interesting. It was so light before, and now it's like, because that was more like a watercolor. Now it's like really thick gouache.
The sky is a light blue that gradates to a slightly lighter value closer to the horizon.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Like, I'm surprised they didn't do the horizon first and then paint over on top of it.
Well, I better finish this up because they're going to call to board soon. Luckily, I'm not in the first group.
No, keep going, dude. You gotta finish the painting.
If you're traveling with any stroller car.
Let's skip ahead a little bit.
And again, just a few reminders for Newark. We will be boarding according to the group numbers printed in your boarding pass.
So I think he polished it a little bit, maybe post flight, but he got a really good solid painting in before he actually goes flying. So it was a super interesting painting. I think it was a really cool idea to really put yourself under that time grind of, you got to have your watch out, make sure you're not missing a flight, but at the same time, you get lost in painting, you can easily like spend 2 hours painting. So it's very hairy to paint like that, but very cool as well. Just such a great idea for painting. This next painting, our next video is called 5 Problems with Gouache and How to Solve Them.
When you use gouache, you run into 5 different problems. Number 1, it freezes, which makes winter scenes difficult.
So I like this because he's talking straight to the camera, but he doesn't introduce himself. So ideally you would introduce your name. My name is, I think it's James Gorney. I can't remember. It's Gorney something. I do gouache, watercolor, and then start the painting. Like I'm doing this video is on 5 problems with gouache. So I think that'd be a stronger intro here.
2, it dries fast, which makes blending difficult. Number 3, it reactivates, which makes it hard to glaze. Number 4, it can look chalky. And number 5, it shifts values when it dries.
You have the same issues with acrylic sometimes.
You through all the issues with gouache using this painting of an ice boat. And at the end, we'll get a ride on an ice boat.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like this. So this is the intro. So he does introduce himself, but just this logo. Let's skip ahead a little bit here, guys.
Painting on location much longer without my fingers freezing off. But at least it gives the impression of the scene.
I think it's cool just as is. Like, cuts out the pressure, so we do it just very quick. They wouldn't polish it. Obviously, everyone knows there's some stuff in here he does with the paints. I don't know what he's talking about.
And then ultramarine blue, which helps me get darks if I need them.
Okay, he's introducing the paint, which I think is good. I'm going to skip that. See more of the painting
with gouache.
Gouache.
Is it the same? Can I take just white gouache with me and use it in watercolors to get a similar result of opaque colors?
It's so interesting.
That
He holds a
would
pencil
be
like that.
my big question. I prefer to travel
like
with
this.
gouache because it's a lot easier to fly than it is, for example, with oils, and it dries nice and fast and stuff like that. So that is my question.
Eric, the simple answer is yes, you can use white with your watercolors.
For me personally, I would put this scene way back. Like if you have it like this, I would probably put the figures maybe this big on the screen. If we're using this as an example, he's put them like this. The players are this big, and it's just too close. I think I'd put it way back in the set, so you'd have like maybe a boat here, and then a couple people there, and then you'd have the background, because the background's gonna be super cool with that, you know, like wintry scene, the winter, the ice, and then, you know, so I think that would be better farther back.
Set, or you can use gouache and watercolor together.
And he has like a nice detail here with the painting dipping in the
What
paint.
I want to do now is mix a smooth gradient for the sky.
It's amazing he's using just a
And I
few
have
colors.
the white here, yellow ochre, and the cerulean blue. And I'll make a light tint of the cerulean for the blue of the sky, which gets darker toward the left-hand edge of the painting, and it gets brightest right behind the sail, where the sun is peeking out from behind that triangular sail.
Hi, this is Arthur. I'm
Love the gritty sound of the brush. Like, I usually edit it out of my videos, but it sounds so good in the background.
from Curacao, a Dutch island in the Caribbean. Well, first of all, I was trying to follow your advice and use casein, but casein is very difficult to get, neither on my island nor in Europe. So
That's interesting.
I'm really using gouache, but gouache has also a big disadvantage. I like to draw with
I'm curious how he's organizing this to have people call in and record it, because their call in is very crisp as well. So probably I guess they're just calling in and then he just take it straight from the iPhone. I don't know.
fine liner or with a pen, waterproof ink, but it doesn't work very well with.
So I think this is pretty cool. I like the fact that he's doing kind of Q&A on the fly while he's painting this. It's kind of, I don't know if he's doing that and then he's just doing a voice. I think he's doing a voiceover on top and then the painting is separate, because I don't think you would do both at the same time. But
or just getting very light over more like mid value paint. And I noticed that my white gouache really isn't that opaque unless I apply like a legit blob of it. Is there like a brand that's more opaque, or is that a gouache thing?
Carl, I'd recommend using a gouache that's titanium white or permanent white, which uses a very opaque titanium dioxide pigment. And use the pigment as thick as you can, straight out of the tube, or even if you can, absorb some of the moisture out of the paint so it goes on quite
that's nice. He has some of the scenes there. Let's skip ahead a little bit further here.
I use light in the distance.
I like the
Let me
detail
paint
shots.
this boom here as straight as I can using a straight edge. Grayson Monk says, the thing I struggle with is blocking in a plein air. I want to paint a singular scene, but end up blocking in way more than I intended to paint. Yes, Grayson, I know what you mean. There's a tendency to put in too much detail at the beginning. Oops, botched that. I'll fix that later. And that's the nice thing about gouache is that you can fix mistakes, you can remove detail, you can rub stuff out with a wet rag and go back to where you started.
Blending or transitioning from one color to the next smoothly in gouache. I can do it in oil and watercolor, but I can't figure out how to smoothly transition in gouache.
Nicole, smooth gradients or transition.
I love these detail shots, really. It's really cool. I think he has some really good tips here. Let's skip ahead a little.
To that edge, and it'll make it even more bright and luminous. Doing the same with casein, which is a little more resistant, but you can open it up by wiggling back and forth. And of course, nothing's going to happen on the acrylic. You know that already.
Nope.
Acrylic
Acrylic
emulsion
dry.
is very, very robust, very strong.
Yep.
You know that when you try to clean off your palette with acrylic.
That's why I use glass. Don't use wood.
Hi, James. Thank you. Sometimes I feel like I'm coloring instead of painting. Do you think that's because the consistency of my paint isn't appropriate? Appreciate your help.
I would guess it has less to do with the consistency of your paint than it does about your procedure. Nothing wrong with coloring. That's a whole valid way of working. You can color in shapes and then do the line work afterwards. Or you can kind of find it in the paint, which is what I'm doing here.
This is a really cool, like, two-tone. He has the photo on one side, on half the painting, and half is the painting. So it's a really nice, because he's detailing shot. He's only showing part of it. He's not zooming out, where a lot of paint tutorials, you have that paper inside of the thing and have like some dead space. He's actually zoomed in, and you're just getting part of it, and then the other part here. So that's a really nice way to film it, I think. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, guys, here. Like that sound, too. It's so gritty.
And when I spray this with fixative and put down varnish, It may change some of the relationships of the tones as they went down, but it usually keeps them pretty stable. Good to have a clean area of the palette to work with and a very clean brush.
I would just recommend do a separate, I usually do mine in a separate thing, and then if you're going to do a pure, I don't know if he's mixing color, but if you don't want any color, I would just do it separate in its own bucket.
But I've sprayed this now with workable fixative, so I feel safe to do a quick couple of strokes of the finish varnish over the surface without fear of disturbing it. Notice how
it reactivates.
the darks get darker. It looks like an oil painting. And why did I write 2002 instead of 2022? Who knows? Anyway, I'm in the past. Well, now that that painting is finished, the wind is picking up,
Very
and
nice.
I'm dying to get a ride on one of these ice boats.
This is a really great way to end the video, is have actually the ice boat, something action related to what you're painting actually in the video. I think it adds quite a lot to the story building of a video. Let's get to the next one. The next one's called Painting a Dramatic Townscape in Watercolor.
Sketchbook's open. It's going to be a watercolor townscape in Hudson, New York.
It's very nice how he's like super detailed shot in here. There's no dead space. It's like full all in there, which I really like. Some painters, they'll, like I said, I mentioned before, they'll kind of have a lot of dead space. It's a total waste of paper or video. This is nice where he's orientating back and
What
forth.
I like about the scene is the way this block of 5 townhouses are framed in by a dark silhouette of St. Mary's Church behind. What I want to establish early on is the big statement of light versus dark and warm versus cool. The buildings themselves are the warm and light mass, and is cooler and darker relatively around.
It's so cool watching him paint. You're just like, I want to go paint in that small size. It looks easy, you know? Versus you get like a bigger palette, it's like it's very cumbersome, but that right in your lap.
I'm also attracted to the contrast of shapes, the wild, jagged tree branches versus the rectilinear architecture.
But it's also interesting that painting that style, it's very, I don't know, if you live in Indiana, I've lived in Indiana several times, and it's more, the whole culture in itself is to be demure, not be a big show off, really kind of hide your, like if you have a brand logo, they'll put a really tiny logo, which you can't barely see, but no one can be flashy. Flashy is the opposite. It's the opposite of Miami, you would say. Like Miami's like big flash, Lamborghini. But in Indiana, you'd be like kind of buttoned up and conservative, and you don't want to show like you're taking up a big spot of the sidewalk, even though there's no one on the sidewalk. Like elsewhere, you might actually set up a full easel or something, but here you can't do it, so you kind of just crunch in your lap. You're very by yourself, so it's very much into the culture of Indiana as well, but also very practical. And you gotta love this detail
Another
shot.
contrast to the rational, four-square, even, measured sort of Georgian architecture of those townhouses. You've got the romantic, Gothic sort of spires of this Victorian-style Catholic church, and the way it lines up, those are a dark gray behind the light mass of the townhouse facade.
And he has really good sound in here for the voiceover. It's obviously done in a kind of a sound thing, so it's very crisp sound. As well as you got all the background sounds. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, guys. Which this background sound adds a little bit, because you know you're on site. If you take it away, then it might look a little more fake, so in this case it adds.
Two ways to paint a branch, either
but normally you
away
wouldn't want
from
that
the
background.
trunk, out toward the tip where you taper it as you go, or from the outside in. The moment I'm doing it as it grows from the base outwards, but you can do it the other way too. And then for the finer detail of branches,
he spread it out.
A split brush, dry brush effect can lay down a lot of twigs at once. The dryness has to be just right.
That doesn't convince me. For leaves, I think it works, but It doesn't look like little twigs. Although the trees and bushes there are very woody, like very stringy like that in Indiana. So other areas the trees aren't so crazy branch like. Indiana though, it's very typical, these trees with tons and tons and tons of branches, so could be super annoying to try to paint them with a really thin brush. Let's skip ahead a little bit here, guys. Just adding a little bit of music here. Getting closer to the final product. Very, very nicely done. Very challenging too with all that little detail on the building. I don't know if I like that angle with, I like the light on that building, but not necessarily the church there. I would.
If
put
you
the
like
church
this video, you'll probably
off.
enjoy my full-length tutorial, Watercolor in the Wild. I'll put links in the description to that video on Gumroad, also to the special ones on casein and gouache.
So pretty clever. Let's see how that finishes the product.
Stuff, and a video that continues the story. So check them out and share with your friends.
Okay, so he has a whole bunch of stuff at the end. I would just put one or two, not like, this is like too busy, I think. Let's go check out his website. So the website has kind of this nice casual kind of script here, James Gurney, so that might be how he actually paints and signs his name on the painting. That's a really cool way. If you have a nice signature, that would say a really nice way to do it to, you know it's the artist website. You got the art of James Gurney, which he has like a whole bunch of dinosaur stuff, which, Dinotopia, Color and Light. Okay, so he must do like children's books or something as well. He has a little bit about himself, read more. And he has some of the books that he's done, which is obviously really smart to put there on top. It's interesting that he doesn't have his artwork up top as far as, I mean, obviously you want to sell your books. And it's really cool, he has free shipping included with the book, so you don't have to worry about that. You just order and send it away. And he's obviously done a lot of this Dinotopia, I guess. Let's go check out all products. So it looks like all the products here are books or how to paint and all that stuff, which is smart. But you kind of want to see like, hey, do you do any artwork sold here? Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. It's kind of strange. Maybe he only focuses on, he has a video site. So I think these are just videos you can download, which is really smart to have this all for sale. He has a lot of products, which makes sense. He's probably been painting quite a long time, so that he has a whole bunch isn't surprising. He has some prints. So he's selling prints. I'm surprised there's no originals page on here. That would be like, why wouldn't you do originals? Because he's obviously painting originals. And then you got about him, more about him. So he has a bunch of articles. He has some museum exhibitions. Mostly on Dinotopia, so probably I should have covered his Dinotopia kind of thing. He has some used books. Well, this is really interesting. He's reselling his own used books, so I'm surprised he doesn't have his artwork here. I thought he would have had his artwork on here, so a little strange. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I might want to put like a YouTube and kind of have like a sample of his work that he's kind of doing YouTube, probably as one page. Not necessarily, and have them embedded. Don't have them go to YouTube, but have them embedded. I think that might be a little small improvement he could add. And then also the originals, it'd be nice to see his original painting. Maybe he doesn't sell them, I'm not sure. But that would be kind of cool to see as well. Overall, I recommend it. And if you'd like to see more, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next Artist React video. Thanks for watching, guys.